Hey guys, this is Carl Haynard here, and I just wanted to give you my opinions and some thoughts on the brand new Harry Potter movie, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Now, it's July 16th right now, and I saw the movie on opening night, so July 15th, even though it was closer to the 14th. But it just happened to coincide with the fact that the 15th was my birthday, and it turned out to be probably, it was a really cool experience going to an opening night movie. I've never gone to an opening night show before, so this is also kind of a new experience for me. So obviously everyone's been looking forward to this movie for quite some time. This is probably the most anticipated movie in many people's lives for several years. I personally was looking forward to this movie, not so much for the action, but more just to see how they would wrap up this series. Also how they would fix their mistakes with not introducing the actual Deathly Hallows in any of the previous movies. So I wanted to see how they would compensate for their lack of showing the memories and all that nonsense. I'll do my best to make this not too much about the plot, but more about the movie itself, the actual directing and the feel, and whether it had the heart and soul or not. So the movie starts off, obviously, exactly where the other one left off. In fact, it starts off before we even see the Warner Brothers and Harry Potter logos. So it literally cuts to Voldemort getting the Elder Wand, and then shows opening credits, which is an interesting way to introduce the movie, in my opinion. They're obviously very aware, yes, we just want to get this over with. Anyways, they started Shell Cottage and they buried Dobby and all that nonsense. I was a little miffed at how fast-paced the beginning of the movie was, and that's fine, but it seemed like they didn't think about their plan about going into Gringotts at all, and that's just a minor quibble. This is a person who's read the book, and there was practically a chapter devoted to them just planning it. So, again, the pacing's a bit different in this movie. Apart from that, though, the beginning was pretty good, and then they head off to Gringotts. I found that the Gringotts scene actually to be pretty lacking, and I was a little bit worried for the movie at this point. I didn't really enjoy the invasion, not the invasion, but the actual break into Gringotts for a few reasons. First off, they didn't really exploit the actual stealthiness of it very much at all. Additionally, the interactions with the fellow Death Eaters and disguise, all that, weren't nearly as awkward as I believe they should have been. They could have really brought out the stealthiness, though, and put more focus on Harry imperiousing various people just to get them through, as if everything is barely being held together by Harry under the cloak and the secret underpinnings of the Imperious Curse and all that nonsense. So I felt like that could have been brought out a bit more. As for the actual effect and look, it was pretty similar to what I imagined in my head, so I had no problem with the aesthetic. I just wish the pacing were a bit different and some emphasis was different on the actual break-in. Them getting out was very interesting, but I was surprised that they changed it so that it was actually Hermione's idea for them to mount a dragon. It doesn't sound like her at all. It's something more impulsive that Harry would do because he's more of an intuitive thinker. She's more of an intellectual thinker, and I think in this situation would actually be stumped in this real life. So I don't really agree with that change. Anyways, the story progresses, and by some divine providence, Harry literally just thinks, oh, this is where the next Horcrux must be. The same thing applies to Helga Hufflepuff's cup, to be honest. There was no real explanation as for the memories or anything like that. Really, they just used Harry's intuition and like a spider sense practically for Horcruxes, because he can apparently hear them. I mean, again, this is something that's not in the book, and it does kind of work on screen for the purposes of their screenplay, but then again, it kind of seems a little bit like BS. I mean, there could have been something a little more explained, but this is fairly eloquent, and again, this probably wasn't their focus on the movie. Their focus on the movie was actually more on the battle, considering that 3/4 of the movie was just an extended battle scene that only took 3 chapters from the book or something like that. Anyways, they progress, get to Hogwarts, blah blah blah. Something I found awkward, actually, was that considering like they were just at Shell Cottage, like it seemed like by the pacing, like 24 hours before they actually invaded Gringotts, Luna was just at Shell Cottage, and they had just rescued her. And then he meets Aberforth and goes into, obviously, the room of requirement, and there she is standing. Like, how did you get there? A little bit of an inconsistency issue. Maybe they could have made it more clear that it wasn't just like a few hours they spent at Shell Cottage, but rather a few days or weeks, actually, of planning. Anyways, they get the assistance of the D8 and the rest of the Hogwarts teachers and faculty, apart from obviously the Death Eaters and Snape, to fortify the castle and basically just to prepare for this incoming attack and Voldemort himself. Something I found interesting actually was just this preparation scene was very cool. I really enjoyed it. Especially Professor McGonagall when she wakes up the statues. It was pretty identical to what I had imagined in my head. Plus, I loved how her actors really brought out McGonagall's character with saying how she really had always wanted to use that spell. I think that really reflected the audience's attitude of I really wanted her to see her use that spell. It was pretty cool, I have to admit. And the effects are absolutely gorgeous. No complaints there. The effects are gorgeous for this scene. Moving onward, they seem to have located the battle not in the Great Hall, which actually could have been more thematically dramatic, but instead in the front courtyard, which I don't really understand. Sure, it works, and it's just a setting, and it really has no impact on the plot whatsoever, but I just don't see why they moved it there. It just didn't need to happen. I guess they wanted a scene, they just thought, oh, that looks like better for a battle instead of a dining room, I don't know. To me, and to the rest of the Potter fans, the Great Hall is such an iconic room, it would have been a pretty cool thing to see him there. It's like if Luke and Darth Vader, instead of essentially battling in the Emperor's private quarters, basically his office, they instead battled on Hoth. I mean, that's the difference between you and me, of like someone might find this significant, someone else might not. Personally, I just wish they kept it in the Great Hall, but again, it's such a small thing, I really shouldn't complain. So obviously you have the first half of the battle goes on, and it pretty much plays out exactly as it does in the book. Wonderful. That's great. Actually, I really enjoyed the battle. It was really tense, and to be honest, I did fear for a lot of characters' lives and stuff like that. Even though I knew it was going to happen, David Yates does a great job of making such a dramatic battle without it being too much shit on the screen at once. It's actually a really elegant battle. It's really hard to explain, but if you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's pleasing to look at, not just busy. So then obviously you have the intermission in the battle. Harry goes to sacrifice himself. We got that. We know how that happens. And all of that, in my opinion, was to the text exactly as I imagined it. The most important part of the movie to me is that part, and they nailed it. And I was so happy that they nailed it perfectly. And the performances there were top notch. Absolutely stunning. And it was great to see Dumbledore on screen again, at least for those few brief moments. And it was kind of clever in that scene too. I laughed a few times. And overall, that part of the finale, honestly, was just fantastic. No complaints. Second half of the battle, everyone comes back together, just like in the book. They're carrying Harry. We got it. That's close to the original text. I was so ready for Neville Longbottom's screen. So ready, in fact, that I had basically gone to the theater with a small toad and dressed as Neville Longbottom. He is the unsung hero in this entire series, and I love Neville Longbottom. I was ready for him to just be a badass and kill Voldemort's snake at that moment where everyone's together. But instead, they don't just go to Neville, they show Draco Malfoy going over to his family. Whatever. Just get him out. That's fine with me. I don't care. I want to see more Neville. Finally, Neville comes forward, and instead of basically giving Voldemort the finger, or whatever he does in the text to resist and attacking his snake, instead he gives a speech on why Harry does not matter. And I found that just to be entirely dissatisfying. Whatever. We move on, and I'm ready for him to kill the snake when he finishes his speech, and Voldemort just knocks him back and knocks him out, as if the writers gave me a middle finger saying, you know what the text said? Fuck the text. We have this movie. So I was kind of a little disappointed that they didn't set Neville on fire and have the Sorting Hat and have him be a badass at that moment. I thought it would have been much more of an impact to have everyone there and everyone see it. I was so ready and then so disappointed when it didn't happen. So the battle starts again, Harry runs for it, and starts to duel with Voldemort, which is a little strange. I don't believe it happened that quickly in the book. Who cares? Just pacing. It's not a big deal. Then you have Ron, Harry, and Hermione going after the snake. And honestly, I can see why they didn't have Neville killed at that moment, because they wanted an extended sequence of them finding the snake. That's fine. I understand that. but it takes away from Neville. And then they finally find the snake after a few close encounters, and Neville just comes out of nowhere and cuts its head off, and the thing just evaporates. No problem with this, but it was almost like Neville killed it as a coincidence, not because he had just become so much of a badass by his 7th year. And I think that's a little bit of a discredit to the character, so whatever. The battle between Harry and Voldemort itself was actually, even though I expected it to be quite brought out and made more movie-like, as StoryCorp and Hollywood pretty much demand, I didn't find it to be overbearing. Even the scene where they're flying through the air together, even if that was a little bit awkward to watch, because it looked like Voldemort was like enjoying himself a little too much there, I thought it was still very enjoyable, and honestly, even if it wasn't described to that level of detail in the actual text, I think it was a well-deserved and well-made step in liberating the text a little bit. Because at this point, Rowling seemed like she got a little sparse with what she was writing and wanted to finish. Fine with her, she's written thousands of pages, but I'm glad that they took that extra step and brought it into something that seemed more like larger than life, which is great. So, final details. There's the final Priori Incantatem scene. This shouldn't have happened, and I don't understand why these directors, David Yates, he insists on having Priori Incantatem happen in every duel that we see in the 5th through 7th movies. I guess 8th if you want to be specific. Every duel you have the connection of the wands for some reason, and it's honestly something that was like a once in a million chance if your wands happen to have the same core. It's something that only happens once in like 1,000 years, and that's what happened with Harry and Voldemort in the graveyard and in the graveyard alone. So I think it's a little off-putting to see that there. I guess he wanted to visualize it as if it was like Star Wars with 2 lightsabers and having them people like struggle against each other with the battle of wills in that sense. But I think instead of going with just brute will and brute force, it would have been a little more impressive to see fast action, not quick cuts, but agility on both the hands of Voldemort and Harry. It would have been a little more interesting to see that instead of them just gritting their teeth and holding their wands extra hard. That sounds dirty. But anyways, we have the expected ending. Voldemort dies. I thought it interesting that they had him disintegrate as if he was made of ash. Very, very cool effect, and actually I think well-deserved. Kind of emphasized the point that he was something less than human. He doesn't deserve a corpse. Very well put. Good on you, David, for having that changed. So we have the ending. Everyone's happy. Then we have the biggest plot hole, or not really a plot hole, but just a really big omission in my opinion, where Harry has the Elder Wand, and he just snaps it in half. That didn't happen, and that's okay. It didn't happen. He could have snapped it in half, but what's he gonna use for a wand now? He never fixed the Phoenix Wand. Which means that we lose that symbolism of Harry becoming himself again. At once, everything is normal. Everything has been fixed through divine magic, and we lose that because it just wasn't important. Also, it was a little upsetting not to see Teddy Lupin in the epilogue, but that's just small potatoes. Anyways, I really enjoyed the movie. Thought it looked beautiful. There were just small things here and there, but obviously it's one of my favorite Potter movies, and I highly enjoyed it a lot. And honestly, can't complain, and it was well $8 spent. So you guys have to see this, make your own conclusions, make a video response, and hopefully give me some opinions on my first ever movie overview and review. So thanks for everything, and see you in the next video.